So after Jesus had said these things, he went out with his disciples over the brook Kidron. Next week, we're going to have a map, or in the weeks to come when I keep teaching through this, we're going to have a map that shows the route through Jerusalem and in the area that Jesus took tonight. It's something like 2.5 miles that Jesus is going to walk in this evening while he's under trial and getting beaten up, okay? So right now, he's going to leave the upper room, and he's going to walk kind of across the old city, Jerusalem, and he's going to cross the Kidron Valley and go up the Mount of Olives, okay? So the brook Kidron is a really beautiful and interesting historical place. One writer called it that black and bloody brook. And in fact, its name speaks of black and it also speaks of cedars. And what it speaks of is that it was this place where there were constantly dark things that would happen in this valley. If you read the Old Testament, a lot of times whenever Israel would worship idols and then a revival would happen and they'd realize that they'd sinned against God, they would take these idols and they'd take them just down into the Kidron Valley and they'd bust them up and break them up and burn them down there. Now, what's really interesting about the Kidron Valley and the brook that flew through, you know what I mean, is that there was a trough that went from the Temple Mount and carried blood from all the sacrificial animals down into the Kidron Valley and into the brook Kidron. And that would create a long and windy wadi. Let's all say that together. A long and windy wadi, all right, all the way down to the Dead Sea, okay? So essentially, when animals were slaughtered, some of that blood used in the sacrifice and on the altars, and then essentially just poured out by gallons and gallons and millions of gallons out through a trough down into this little valley right outside the front doors, through the brook and all the way out to the Dead Sea, really essentially covering Israel with the blood of the Lamb, okay? And so here tonight we have Jesus leaving Jerusalem. I got to get the displays up there in the pictures so that it's all there for you. By the way, Israel 2022 in November, we're going to Israel, so start saving up. That's like a year and a month, so start, that's a Christmas present. Yeah, there will be lots about the cost and everything later. But still, just start saving up right now, trust me. Okay? And we'll be in this space. We'll be right here. It'll all be virtual reality Bible, okay? And as you're there, you'll see that Jesus came down, stepped across the brook, okay? The bloody brook, because what time of year was it? Passover. So there was blood flowing through this brook. The Lamb of God crossed over the blood of the Lamb, and went up the slope to the Mount of Olives, to a garden, to an olive grove called the Garden of Gethsemane, okay? Moving right along, it says that he went to where there was a garden, which he and his disciples entered. So he crosses the brook Kidron, and it's just amazing how it's all just right there within walking distance. It's all, really, you can stand on the hill of olives, the Mount of Olives, and you can just see there's the Garden of Gethsemane right there. There's the brook Kidron right there. There's Jerusalem right there on the hill of Mount Moriah. There's the wall around Jerusalem. There's where the temple used to sit. Now, next to the temple, there's the Dome of the Rock, and so you can just picture everything as you're right there. And as we would go to the Garden of Gethsemane, we would go to this place where the Bible says Jesus would frequent with his disciples, and especially he would frequent during this week, this Passion Week. He spent a lot of time in the Garden of Gethsemane. He spent a lot of time staying just up the hill in Bethany. And there in the Garden of Gethsemane was an olive grove full of olive trees. And even today, you can go there, and there are 2,000-year-old olive trees that are still there that were there from the time of Jesus. So you're in the garden, and you're with the trees that Jesus was with. Now, it's hilarious because these trees look like they're 2,000 years old. They're like, somebody just cut me down already, And they're just all, they're like, I can't handle it as much more, I shouldn't have taken my vitamins because, And it's so funny because they're like leaning over, finally. And someone comes up and props them up. Like they'll just like stick a stick on them and they're like, no. And then they keep living. And then 20 years later, someone goes and they build like a nice ceramic cast around that arm of that olive tree, and they're like, I'm going to live forever, And the same trees that are there, and the same olive presses are there, these giant concrete blocks that you would stick olives under them, and then bam, 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 and then the olive oil would trickle out and go down the little channel and into the bowl. And would you believe that Gethsemane means olive press? It means olive press. And what do you think happened to Jesus while he was in Gethsemane? Now, John doesn't cover it, okay? But the other Gospels do, especially Luke. And it was there that Jesus went and he prayed and he cried out to the Father as he was pressed before the night of his crucifixion. He was pressed to cry out to the Lord, if there's any other way for us to redeem mankind and save them from their sin, if there's any other way than for me to go to the cross and that excruciating pain, if there's any other way, especially for me to be separated from you, Father, the fellowship that we've had since from before the foundation of the world, if there's any way for you to not turn your back and your face from me, let's do that. If there's any other way than for me to die. If maybe these people are actually pretty good people, all right, and they're pretty righteous, self-righteous, and they can just kind of make it on their own, and they don't really need God to die a crucified death on a Roman implement of execution, then let's do that way. Like, what about those Prineville people that are going to come in a couple days? They're pretty awesome. Red-blooded Americans, man, I love them. If there's any other way, maybe one of those guys could rise up for us. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. And he prayed 3 different times. He prayed that prayer without maybe the extra stuff, okay? And as he did, you know what Luke's gospel says? He sweat great drops of blood. You know that doctors have studied that that's an actual medical condition. I'm going to butcher it. Something like hematidrosis or something like that. And it means you've gone through so much strain and so much stress that your capillaries burst in your skin and it causes blood to come out your sweat pores. That's what Jesus went through that night as he realized the agony that awaited him, especially even momentary separation from the Father who he'd been with since before the foundation of the world. So it was there at Gethsemane that Jesus went through the olive press, okay? And it was there at Gethsemane where Jesus used to spend a lot of time, special time with his buds. Do you guys have any places like that? Special time with you do? Totally? Yeah, you're like, totally. Man caves, right? This was Jesus' man cave, okay? This was Jesus' park, this was Jesus' mountain getaway, And so he entered this place. There was this garden. And I was reminded as I was studying of my grandpa's favorite song. It was written by Austin Miles in 1913. Anybody know it? I Come to the Garden. You guys know it? I actually never really got the song because I'm not a huge garden guy. But the other day, Lindsay and I were driving back from Paulina. I was like, so what's up with this time with the garden, And then as I was studying today, I was like, the garden, the secret garden, right? And do you guys know the hymn? Let's all sing it. Let's stand. No, don't stand. It says, I come to the garden alone while the dew is still on the roses. And the voice I hear falling on my ear, the Son of God discloses. And he walks with me, and he talks with me, and he tells me I am his own. And the joy we share while we tarry there, none other has ever known. Do you know that that's what the disciples experienced at the Garden of Gethsemane? We come, me and my 12, 11 brothers, we come to the garden alone and we just spend time with Jesus while I don't know if there were roses in there. I think there's roses now. While the dew is still there and we just hear his voice and Jesus is talking with us and there's just nothing like it. And, it was my grandpa's favorite song and he was a rose guy. He had a ton of roses and so I can think of him trimming his roses and singing about his time with Jesus. And did you know that's available for you today? That you can have that intimate time with Jesus in the garden with Jesus, just time alone with him. It's amazing for me to just step back from all that's going on in my life and all that's going on in my world. And we've got so much stacked day to day in our schedule. We're over here, we're driving over here, we're doing this, that, and the other, soccer practice and ranch ministry, got to go to Paulina, and I'm remodeling my house right now, and I got to get this door in, this, that, and the other, blah, 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 blah. And the Lord's like, do you remember that I came to this earth? Do you even remember, like, I actually was here? There's dirt over there that I touched. And do you know that I'm actually here right now? I made a way for you to just enter into time with me and talk to me. And the voice I share as we tarry there, none other has ever known. He's bought that for us by his blood, that we can spend that time with him. And so they went to the garden alone. We're never going to get through Caiaphas' trials today. I apologize. I know you guys were really looking forward to that. I'm liking our garden time, though. Literally an olive garden. I like the Olive Garden. Okay. Verse 2. And Judas, when you read Esther, that the Jews, when they read Esther and they read of Haman, the bad guy, they hiss when they read Esther. Did you guys know that? Read the book of Esther, and they would pound their foot and they hiss when they read of Haman. That's me when I read of Judas. And Judas, what a jerk. Good thing I'm not anything like him. Anyways, and Judas, who betrayed him, also knew the place, for Jesus often met there with his disciples. Jesus went to a place, because Jesus knew what was going down. Jesus went to a place where he knew that Judas was going to find him to betray him. It was like Jesus is like, let me help you out, Judas. Like, you're going to try to do this thing. It's got to be done. Here it is, our favorite hangout spot, the man cave, okay? It's been said that one of the greatest treacheries of Judas was that he actually went to this special place, the garden, to betray and arrest Jesus and to begin this torturous process. Chris and I were talking about it as we were driving yesterday in the truck, and Chris goes, yeah, forget that he betrayed the Son of God, but that he did it in the man cave, that's the big deal. And I was like, no, Chris, that's not the big deal. No, I'm kidding. We're still learning, though, aren't we? Okay. Verse 3. He's going to beat me up after church. Then Judas, having received a detachment of troops and officers from the chief priests and Pharisees, came there with lanterns and torches and weapons. So Judas, yes, good old Judas, he got a detachment of troops. Maybe your version says cohort of troops. He took Roman soldiers, and there's a couple long versions of this. Let me just specify. A full auxiliary cohort of Roman soldiers had a paper strength of 1,000 men. 760 foot soldiers, 240 cavalry, and would be led by a chillarch, which meant a leader of 1,000, or a commander. In practice, a cohort normally numbered 600 men, but in any case, the noun can refer to of about 200 men. So it's not necessarily to assume that an entire maniple was present. It goes on and on and on. But to study this week for me and to realize, like, Judas went and got anywhere from 1,000 Roman soldiers to 200 Roman. Either way, it's a lot, right? So feel free to adjust as you'd like. Not to mention the temple guards and the high priest servants. They all come to the garden, and what do they have with them? Torches. John's the only guy that references the torches. So you kind of have this Beauty and the Beast moment, when Gaston is like, kill the beast, and everyone's like, yeah. And so they're going, and they've got torches, and they've got swords, and they've got clubs, and they are coming to take by force this preacher that seems to be causing a bit of a problem around town, okay? And so with lanterns and torches and weapons, it was Guzik that said, this shows that Judas misunderstood the nature of Jesus and at the same time underestimated his power. Had Jesus been of the nature to physically battle against Judas and the devil driving the betrayer, the detachment of troops was not enough. And then it was another preacher that said, a sinless man is in an appointment with a garden, about to do battle with Satan's representative. The first time this happened in a garden, the Garden of Eden, the sinless man failed. The second Adam would not. Jesus is going to win this battle. And so, verse 4, Jesus, therefore, knowing all things that would come upon him, went forward and said to them, whom are you seeking? So here they are in the garden. Jesus, through the other gospel accounts, is just sweat drops of blood. He spent time praying that if there's any other way, let this cup pass. Nevertheless, not my will, but yours be done. And then the will of the Father is shown by Judas coming with this great number of troops and guards, okay? And so the great number, they show up. And I know myself, I'm so much like these disciples, like, I would cower and end up running away. I hate confrontation, and something about just like law enforcement, and you're just like, all of a sudden I'm like a little boy, and I'm like, what would, yes, and so here we have Jesus, and when Judas shows up with all these men, all these soldiers, Jesus just goes and he hides behind one of those crippling olive trees, and he's like, I hope they don't find me. No, what does Jesus do? He steps up and he shows great courage. And he goes and he is the confronter in the situation. He is the one that asks them, who are you looking for? Like, they don't have to search around. They don't have to go and check ID cards. They know exactly, he knows exactly who they're looking for, and he just calls it out. Who are you looking for? Leon Morris said, the soldiers had come out secretly to arrest a fleeing peasant. In the gloom, they find themselves confronted by a commanding figure who, so far from running away, comes out to meet them and speaks to them in the very language of deity. And if you've ever watched, it's been a long time for me, but the movie Spartacus, there's that scene where, Spartacus is about to be crucified and executed, and they're wondering, where is this Spartacus? Where is he? He's leading this rebellion, and we've got to bring justice, and we're going to execute him for causing this rebellion. Where's Spartacus? Where is Spartacus? And then, like, all of the brave soldiers that have fought with Spartacus, they stand up and they say, I am Spartacus, and then another guy, no, I am Spartacus. I am Spartacus. And everyone's like, everyone's Spartacus, apparently, It's the old school Slim Shady. Will the real Slim Shady please stand up? Please stand up, okay? And so I don't even know that song. I just know that part. I don't know if it's bad, so don't go Google it, okay? But I do like M&Ms, though, okay? And so they come. Who are you looking for? Jesus of Nazareth. I'm Jesus of Nazareth. No, I'm Jesus of Nazareth. No, it's like, oh no, all these guys are Jesus of Nazareth. What are we going to do? That's not at all what happened. Verse 5, they answered him, Jesus of Nazareth, or Jesus the Nazarene. Jesus said to them, I am he. And Judas, who betrayed him, also stood with them. These three words are so incredible. I am he. Ego, eimi. It references back to Exodus chapter 3. Will you guys go there with me? The second book of the Bible. So if you brought your Bible, Exodus, so it starts out Genesis, then Exodus, okay? And just go to chapter 3. This is the burning bush passage. Then Moses said to God, this is 3:13, Exodus 3:13. Then Moses said to God, indeed, when I come to the children of Israel and say to them, the God of your fathers has sent me to you, and they say to me, what is his name? What shall I say to them? So God is calling Moses to go back into Egypt and to tell Pharaoh to let my people go. What should I say? Like, what authority am I even speaking from here? Why should he listen to me? What should I say to them? Verse 14, and God said to Moses, tell him, I am who I am. And he said, thus you shall say to the children of Israel, I am has sent me to you. So this references the burning bush passage that Yahweh, God, can just call himself I am. You know when someone calls you on the phone, and now it's hard with cell phones and caller ID, but back in the day, you'd be like, hello, who could this possibly be? And they just say, hey, it's me. And you're like, I totally know who you are because I know your voice. You're in a relationship where you can say, hey, it's me. That's the same with the Lord. He's like, who should we say it is? He's like, I am. Oh yeah, there's only one of you. I am, okay? And so in this passage of John, when Jesus says, I am he, the Jews know that Jesus is referencing that he's God. In fact, it takes us to the purpose of the whole book of John. Anybody know what it is? John chapter 20, John, I think it's John 20, 21, or something like that, or 31, sorry. Okay. You guys have it memorized though, right? And these things were written that you might believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, and that by believing you might have life in his name. So why is the Garden of Gethsemane passage written to us in John chapter 18? And why is this little story about Jesus standing up bravely and said, who are you looking for? Jesus of Nazareth. I am he. Why would John care to write that part? These things were written so that you would believe that Jesus Christ is the Son of God, and that by believing you might have life in his name. So hopefully today, it's our prayer right now. I believe, I believe, I believe, I believe. I believe. Like Jesus so courageously stood up and was like, I'm God, what you gonna do about it? Okay, that's what's going on right here. Okay, and it is, of course, taking us back to John 8:56. Will you go there real quick with me? And by the way, can you give me 8 minutes? 8 minutes. That's all I'm asking for, okay? Before the torches and the swords and the clubs come out. John 8:56. John records Jesus in an intense conversation with the Jewish leaders, okay? And it's in John 8:56 that Jesus tells them, your father Abraham rejoiced to see my day, and he saw it and was glad. Then the Jews said to him, you're not yet 50 years old, and you've seen Abraham? And Jesus said to them, most assuredly I say to you, before Abraham was, I am. No! You guys know what Jesus just said to them? He's like, I was before Abraham. And they're like, you're not even 50. What do you mean you were before Abraham? He's like, before even Abraham was, I am. And their mind goes back to the burning bush passage, to God who said, call me I am. And Jesus is here calling himself I am. And they're putting all the puzzle pieces together. He's saying he's God. And the critics of Christianity and the cults would say that Jesus never claimed to be God, and John never thought that Jesus was God, and the Jews never thought Jesus was God. That is just complete malarkey, you guys. Jesus knew that he was saying that he was God. The Jews knew that Jesus was saying he was God. And John the evangelist said Jesus knew he was saying he was God. And that's why John said, these things are written so you believe that Jesus is the Son of God. He is. I am. Not me, but he. He is. Okay? All right. Tasker says, the Greek I am, ego eimi, rendered I am, he might well suggest divinity from those familiar Greek words. It's the rendering of the sacred name of God. Now, verse 6. Now, when he said, I am he, they drew back and fell to the ground. Okay, so we've got something like at least 200 people here coming to get Jesus in the quiet garden. Maybe 1,000 people. Okay, imagine. They're all, let's get him. And you can just imagine one of these soldiers, like getting ready in the morning, putting on his buckle and his buckler and his shield and all that. And his wife's like, so what do you think you got going on today? He's like, well, the norm, but kind of hear there's like a rabble-rouser around, some preacher that's kind of frustrating the Jewish leaders, and we're going to go arrest him, bring him in. It's probably going to be no big deal. Normally when we go get these street preachers, it's like, all right, come on, you just kind of grab them by the ear and like drag them off, And that's probably what the day is going to be like. And then he comes back that night. She's like, so how was your day? And, did you get him by the ear and lead him off? And he's like, this guy, I've never seen anything like it. This guy called Jesus the Nazarene. Like, we show up, 1,000 of us. He's got his, like, pathetic little band of people hanging out in the garden. You know, the dew was still on the roses, you know. And as we get there, like, he stands up and says, who are you looking for? Now, I've seen The Office, and I remember when Michael Scott was in trouble, and he said, you know what you got to do in those meetings is you got to be the first one to talk, and you got to sit a little bit higher than everyone else in the office, and that shows who's the boss. And that's what Jesus did. Jesus wasn't about to be bested by Judas. So Jesus stood up, and he sat a little bit taller, and he said, who are you looking for? And this soldier, as he's telling his wife, and he's downloading that night, as they get ready for bed, he says, I've never seen anything like this. He said, I am. And all of us fell over backwards. We were all struck down. We all were knocked over backwards. I don't know what happened. It was almost like the earth shook, just came right out from under. The rug was pulled out, and we were laying on the ground. And as we kind of came to, what is going on? We climbed back up. There he is standing there again, and he says, I'll ask you again, who are you looking for? Whew, my heart was beating. Okay? By the way, this is all a paraphrase. It's true. Trapp says, here our Savior let out a little beam of his majesty, of his deity, and 500 men fell before him. That was just a little beam of his, I am. Okay, probably wasn't like that. But. And then Clark says, the very breath of his mouth confounded and drove back and struck them down to the earth. Verse 7, then he asked them again, whom are you seeking? And they said, Jesus of Nazareth? Okay. This doubles his authority in the moment, in the confrontation. They were arresting him, and he had to ask them twice what they were there for. Jesus answered in verse 8, I've told you that I am he. Therefore, if you seek me, let these go their way. I already told you. And then he stands up to protect his sheep. It was so, as verse 9 says, that the saying could be fulfilled, which he spoke, of those whom you gave me, I've lost none. And so it's just amazing. The shepherd protects his sheep. John chapter 10, the good shepherd lays his life down for his sheep. A hireling runs and hides whenever danger comes because they're not his sheep. But Jesus stood up and said, who are you looking for? I am he. And if you're looking for me, I've already told you I'm him. You can let these guys go. Okay? And so we'll have the worship team come on up right now. And by the way, fulfillment of prophecy and fulfillment of his prophecy. And then verse 10, then Simon Peter, having a sword, drew it and struck the high priest's servant and cut off his right ear. The servant's name was Malchus. So there's an interesting passage in Luke in chapter 22 at the Last Supper when Jesus is telling the disciples basically like from here on out, because I'm leaving you, it's going to be a new period of church history and there's going to be some danger. And you remember how when I sent you out before, I said don't provide any money for your belt, any cloak for your warmth. It's all going to be provided. Now you need to be taking that stuff with you as you go out. And he even says an interesting thing. Don't make it more than it needs to be, and we all probably need to research what it is. But he says, and if you don't have a sword, get a sword. Okay? All you NRA guys are like, yeah, proof text. I always was looking for it. All right? Everyone's like, okay. No, keep them holstered. Okay? But it's this hilarious thing in Luke chapter 22 because he says, and if you don't have a sword, get a sword. And then one of the disciples says, it's funny, it's like they're all sitting, Middle Eastern style around a little table on the ground. And then Peter's like, he whips out 2 swords. And he goes, here's 2. And you can just picture he doesn't really know how to hold them and they're kind of clanking together. And Jesus goes, it's enough. And then they go to the garden. Okay, it's an interesting thing. Do your own research on it. We don't have time for this stuff. But here we have him in the garden. John's the one that calls him out who it is. The other disciples just say, one guy with a sword. John's like, it was Peter. We all know that, right? It was Peter. Cuts off the high priest servant Malchus's What ear? Right ear. Okay? So some have said, and there's not a ton of evidence, but that if Peter was right-handed, and he was going to, and I don't know what kind of lop he was doing here. I don't know much about fencing and sorcery, or swordery. Swordery? Or sorcery. I don't know much about sorcery. I know a little. If he was going after this Malchus from the front, he probably would have chopped off his left ear. If he was right-handed. Some say that he may have come at him from behind, a cheap shot, okay? And that it wasn't courageous of Peter, and he was just kind of acting in classic Peter/Rory fashion of taking matters into his own hands, like, we're going to solve this right now. And the Lord will be like, the Lord says, look at it. Where's it? Oh, the servant's name was, okay, so it's Luke 22 and Luke 22:49 and Matthew chapter 26 and Luke 22:51. Sorry, that's a lot. But Jesus picks the ear up off the ground and just so politely, you guys. These guys are there to arrest him and take him to be killed. And there's been all this dropping on the ground drama and stuff. There's an ear on the ground. Peter just sucker punched Malchus, with a sword. Jesus picks the ear up, and then he just says, permit me now even this. Like, is it okay if I heal you? And heals him. And we're going to see next time we get back into John. By the way, Chris was supposed to preach today, and Chris had to go on a trip to get a motorhome to live in for a little while, so Chris didn't preach today, in case you're wondering, but it's me. So we'll see what happens next week. Just the whole story in John 18 is just like a bunch of dirty rottens the whole time. You got Judas just doing what he's doing. And then you've got Malchus, who gets his ear cut off. And Jesus heals him. And does Malchus go, hold up. Man, that's incredible. Where'd you learn how to do that? Guys, I think we're making a mistake here. No, he's like, put your hands up. I'm going to put the handcuffs on you right now. It's just a bummer. Dirty rotten after dirty rotten. We're going to see it through chapter 18. And so Jesus said to Peter, put your sword back in its sheath. Shall I not drink the cup which my Father has given me? Like, at some point or another, we've got to do this thing. We've got to fulfill the gospel, and I've got to lay my life down for the sins of the world. Verse 12, this is it. Then the detachment of troops and the captain and the officers of the Jews arrested Jesus and bound him. And you guys can set your things aside. The betrayal, the arrest, the treachery in the garden, going to be led now off to trial, mock trials before some 4 different rulers before the night is up. And set your things aside. Let's stand together.